Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Van Diesel back into the Cardified Vanguard deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed to like, comment, subscribe, and swatch, shall we? This time we're covering Stoicheia set 9 for Graffinia. So Granfia is that new deck that's kind of like the hybrid of Magnolia and Rorora, I would argue, where, you know, it has the theming in terms of art-wise of Magnolia, but then in terms of skill-wise, they basically have a Rose thing where they just spam plant tokens 24/7. And honestly, this deck is interesting. I would say it's my least favorite of the Stoicheia decks. Because, yeah, Flagberg has now upgraded to one of my favorites. So, like, it's down there with Mag where I don't really like it particularly. So, and I'm about to get, like, a bunch of hate spam now from that. But, yeah, it's fine. It's an interesting deck. So let's go ahead and get this started so we can see what we mean. Maybe it's just because I feel like it's copying two different decks at once. Maybe that's why I don't like it. Anyways, first up we have our starter today, and Kind-Hearted Prince Graffinia. Now this one I actually do like. I like his art. He has like that cool little castle in the background. He's just so young and cute, and that one I like. And then everything else kind of like falls to shit for me. Anyways, good to a boost 5k power, or 5k shield, 6k base. Autos roll time to win second draw card. Standard starter note specified basically means if you win second, you get a free draw. And honestly, it's nice because it refills your hand for the ride deck. This card you use to ride to grade 1, and there's nothing really more I could say about it. The draw could help you top deck and win games from it. I could think of a few times where I actually have had that happen, where the draw is the reason I won. So yeah, one of Graffinia in the ride deck. And this is actually one you need in your ride deck because the grade 1 requires it and the grade 2 might require it, and so I don't really remember. I know the grade 1 requires it though, so one of Graffinia in the ride deck. And then we have our plant token count. So we have 10 plant tokens. You don't need 10. Technically, you only need 8. Or technically after that, you really only need 5, but I like to have 10 because I want to flex on my opponents. So grade 0 boost, 5k power, 0 shield. It represents a plant token in the deck, and it cannot be put into your main deck. It's just put like next to your ride deck, essentially. Or unless you're Zatsuku and you want to put it up in your sleeve. My friend will get that joke. Everyone else may or may not get that joke, depending on if you watch the anime or not. But yeah, so the deck kind of doesn't do anything with the plant tokens outside of just slurp them under one specific card, and we're about to get to that card in a second. But again, I find it very weird how we have 2 decks based off of plant tokens. I feel like this was unnecessary, and Bushy kind of chose to do it anyways. But, that's how it goes. Sometimes they just double up on decks. Because here's the thing that they use the plant tokens for. Nobel Rose Token. I wish I could do a French accent on command, but I cannot because I'm not French. Fuck me. Get sacre bleu. See, that's the best French I can do. Anyways, grade 0 boost, 5k power, 0 shield as per the last one. Represents a Nobel Rose token and cannot be put into your deck. Continues rear guard. This unit cannot be moved to other circles. And if you have Vanguard Graffinia in its card name, all of the following effects are active. So essentially, okay, first up, you can't call this thing unless your Vanguard is a Graffinia, so I'd be damned if you somehow kept this on the board otherwise. Anyways, when your plant token would be placed on rear guard, it is put as a plant gauge under this unit instead. This effect is mandatory, and essentially just slurp your cards into the quote-unquote solo Nobel Rose token. And that other effect is it gets plus 5k for each of its gauges, so you know if you have a total of 1 under there, you only get 5k, but if you have 10 under there, then it gets an extra 20, or sorry, wait, that's not how math works, 50. And then when you would retire a rear guard for a cost, whether it be your ability or your opponent's ability, if the cost may be paid by retiring a plant token rear guard, I assume it doesn't have to specify plant token rear guard. I assume it just means it can specify anything. You may pay its cost by discarding a plant gauge as well. So great, it can kill off its own gauge. Actually, the thing might be it actually has to kill a plant token, which might be a bit of an issue. But hey, you know, it's still good because it can just drop its own gauges very easily. And granted, it does lose power, but you will come to see in a bit that that power goes somewhere else. So it's more like just recycling. And great God, the numbers that you can hit with this. Let's just say this. When I didn't understand what the skill of this deck was, you could technically hit somewhere in the hundreds with this. And even when you know what this deck does, you can still hit well into the 60s. So just saying that now. One of the Nobel Rose token because you can really only have one because there's only one place you can put it in its back row center, and we'll get to that later. Then we have our triggers. First up, we have the Over Trigger and Source Dragon Deity of Blessings, Bless Favor. Grade 0 boost 50k shield, 5k power, over trigger. You may only have one over trigger in your deck. If it's triggering the card, draw a card, choose one, makes +1 for the turn. In a during your draw check, activate its additional effect, which you get to draw a card, choose a unit, it gets +1 crit for the turn, all your farm gets +10, and if you're damaged on the same number of cards as your opponent or more, you choose a damage zone card and heal it. Essentially, and everything Vega that doesn't necessarily auto win you the game. There are other over triggers that definitely auto win you the game. This one makes it a lot harder to kill you because you get 2 draw. Okay, well, first of all, you're guaranteed drawing a million regardless of when you check this. But if you checked it offensively, you get a total of 2 draws. Someone's getting a critical, probably the unit you gave a 1 million to, unless it's the Vanguard, because they probably took the Vanguard, plus 10 to the front row, so a front trigger, and then you get a heal if you have more damage than your opponent. I remember there was a game where me and my friend played. I was at 2 damage, and so no, I was at 1 damage. His ass was at 2. He sacks a heal, and was a premium by the way. He sacks a heal into an over into a crit. Actually, wait, no, it wasn't a crit, because he damage struck to crit the next turn. He got a heal. So he went down from 2 to 0 in 1 turn, and I went up to 3, and I had to take 2 more attacks because my hand was shit. So, and thankfully I saw a heal on my 5th damage check, so technically I was at 4. So at the end of this, I was at 4, and his ass was at 0. Like, the fuck? Long story short, broken ass thing. It like sets you up to survive and it cripples the fuck out of your opponent. It is definitely not an end game over trigger, depending on unless you see it in the end game. But it's definitely a your life is about to get so much harder if you're trying to kill me. One of. Then we have our normal triggers. We have 3 copies of Serene Maiden Lena, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Continues guard soak opponent's vanguard to grade 3 gets plus 5k shield. You know, it's just a easy draw trigger. It has the 10k shield for blocking. It's all around really nice. And you just want to increase your hand cards because while most of your board is basically going to be making plant tokens, and most of those are going to go under here. You might as well try to increase your hand to get more stuff that can make more plant tokens and stuff that isn't just plant tokens, so you can actually keep rear guards. Then we have 4 copies of our Front and Frenzied Harris, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Feel free to swap these 2 around because it's like kind of interchangeable. Continues guard token opponent's vanguard to grade 3 gets plus 5k shield, so a 20k shield front, which is great. It's mainly here to increase the power of the front row because great God, this deck already hit some insane numbers, and increasing the front row's numbers even further is just really fun to see happen. So it's an easy 4 for me, but again, if you want to swap it around for the draws to get more stuff into your hand that isn't plant token based, then go ahead, run more draws in fronts, but I still suggest running fronts with it. Then we have our 4 crits Inspiring Maiden Alana. You should run this regardless. Because grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto break, then I'm about to boost it, put it to soul, choosing gets plus 2k for the turn. Great, so you know, the 2k doesn't really help you that much, but what does help you is the soul. And then again, even then, the deck doesn't really need soul, because I remember I was playing against a deck that, like, killed rear guards, and honest to God, the deck somehow didn't run into a soul problem. And I didn't persona ride that entire game. So, or I did, but it was at like the very end where I've already been like playing most of the game without like extra soul. So the deck doesn't really need extra soul chargers, but it's nice to have just in case. And it's a 2k, so you know that might help you in like the early game when you're rushing a grade 2 Vanguard. So 4 of Alana, it's nice to have, and also you just want to run crits because you know your Vanguard swinging for a decently big number with a, let's just say a casual 25, even though this thing normally hits way more than 25 when I'm playing this deck. And then you know your rear guard is probably going to get for an extra 25, so probably somewhere in the 30s. So extra crits always nice, so 4 of crits. Then we have our heal trigger and Flowery Tone, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. I again read that as LG Pixie. For those of you that know the story behind that, good for you. Give yourself a pat on the back. And if you don't know the story behind it, subscribe and then go find the story behind it. I'll give you a hint. I believe it's in my Leonore deck profile. So, one of them. I don't know which one it is. It's one of them. Anyways, Flowery Tone, it can be any heal, but I prefer the normal heals over the counter heals because, like I said before in other videos, I don't like the counter heals too much. They're a little too situational. While yes, they have more shield than the regular heals when their abilities actually go off. If their abilities don't go off, you're kind of just losing shield, and I don't like having to drop more than 1 card than I used to, so I'd rather have the normal heals. If you want to run the counter heals, go ahead, but normal heals are my way to go. And then we move on to our grade 1s. First up, we have 4 copies of the PG Custodial Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 0 show, 6k base. Continue Sentinel, you have 4s on the deck, autos put on guard circle, choose one of your units, it cannot be in battle, and if your hand is turned, choose a card from your hand, discard it. Standard PG, not specified, basically means that this and only one of the cards in your hand, when you place it on guard circle, you don't have to discard for it, which is amazing, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and that is definitely something you want to do in this deck, like pump out a board. That is what I love about the plant tokens decks, by the way. Like on grade 2 turn, you can go from 0 to 5 really quickly, but you know, you can pump out a board almost immediately with your full hand, even if you couldn't call plant tokens, and then just have this to defend you on your opponent's next turn when they essentially rush you back for going all in. And so it's really nice to have this PG, and I have a vendetta against this card, because when I was playing my Graffinia versus Unica match, I really wanted Unica to win. And granted, Unica, spoiler alert, Unica did in the end win, but the fact that that game lasted so long simply because Graffinia kept luck sacking into damage triggers and somehow Unica always missed its crits even though it had plenty of crits left in deck. It was also annoying the fact that the Graffinia literally kept drawing PGs. It's almost like Graffinia was an anime deck and refused to lose. And then it sacked the over a few turns later, and it still lost because Unica refused to lose too. Thankfully, again, Unica just chose to win out in the end. But oh my god, I love this PG so much, but I also have a vendetta against it because I really wanted Graffinia to lose that match. And it just kept making my life worse. So, 4 of Custodial, really nice, good spammable PG. What's not to like about it? You can also run Plan Prevent. It's the same PG anyways. It's just Custodials for the new boys. And then we run our grade 4 copies of Stepping Cowlex Salvia. See, the thing is, I forgot if Salvia was actually in this deck or not, because I swear I took her out. but I also don't remember if I took her out or not. Well, if I did, we'll figure it out at the end. But grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Autumn, she's placed on rear guard. If your vanguards are grade 3 or greater, you can call plant token to rear. You may, so you don't have to if you don't want to. Plant tokens are grade 0 boost, 5k power, 1 critical, no shield. So all around, pretty great. It's just a free plant token getter. It's not that great. I mean, it's not horrible. It's definitely not bad. It's just that, you know, it's okay. It's just a free plant token, so what's not to like about it? Easy 4 of it. It's okay for what it is. Then we have 4 copies of Farmin' Pumpkin. Oh god, I love that name. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, act rear guard once per turn. If your vanguard has Graffinia in its card name, Soul Blast 1, call plant token to rear, and then if your vanguard's a grade 3 guard, you may call 2 instead of 1. So one thing I like about this entire deck is most of them, except for I think maybe just Salvia, all of them you can use without being on grade 3. You just get benefits for being on grade 3. So that's great. So you can start playing the game the second you hit the grade 2 or even grade 1, technically speaking. Like, for example, this deck, you can just, if you have 2 of these, then, well, no. Actually, yeah, no, if you have this and a certain other grade 1 we're about to go over, then technically speaking, you can make a full board of plant tokens on turn 1, which is great. All around, though, it's a pretty good skill. Being able to call 1 plant token just for the simple cost of a Soul Blast is nice, and then being able to call 2 if you're at grade 3 is even better, because, again, you can slurp those under your Nobel Rose token and make it even stronger. So all around, I really do love Farmer Pumpkin. It's a good grade 1. They made the support card really well because it doesn't splash over into Roroa, because I'd make Roroa a little too good with plant token spamming. So an easy good 4 of it. It's just a good card that I really like in this deck. Then we have 4 copies of the most, in my opinion, broken grade 1 support I've seen in a long ass time. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, Hodo Mushroom, act rear guard, put it to soul, call it to 2 plant tokens to rear guards, and if you're a grade 3 or greater Graffinia vanguard, choose a rear guard, it gets +5 for the turn. So, just ignoring this part right here, regardless of what your vanguard currently is, so it can be a Magnolia, it can be a fucking Zorga, it can be Roroa, fuck it, if you manage to bring it into Dark States, it could be a Bruce, you could send it to Soul and get 2 free plant tokens. This card is stupid. It gives you free Soul and 2 plant tokens out of it. And only if you're at a grade 3's Graffinia is then when you get the 5k. Which arguably doesn't really make that much of a difference. I mean, it does, but, like, you know what I mean. Like, that's good. Listen, this deck doesn't have a soul problem, and even if it did, this automatically fixed it. Just saying. Like, I didn't test out the deck without this because the first line of support was this, but, like, straight up, if it did have a soul problem, they fixed it in 1 card. Just saying. 4 of Horo. It's fucking good. It's free soul, free 2 plant tokens, easiest board spammer on grade 2 I've ever seen. I love this grade 1 and I will never take it out unless they make something astronomically better. 4 of easy. Then we have our last grade 1, which is the grade 1 of the ride deck, Lord of the Future Graffinia, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto is wrote upon by Genius Wolf Graffinia, Genius Wise Wolf Graffinia, call to 1 plant token of back or rear guard center. Why specifically back or rear guard? That is literally the exact same skill, I believe, of Awakening from Slumber Roroa. I would be damned if I remember his name. The grade 1 from the Roroa ride line, where I think it's actually the exact same, except it has to be, it's on ride from the grade 0 instead of on road upon by the grade 2. Why the back center though? Like, there's no reason to do that, but sure. Easy 1 of in the ride deck for Graffinia though. It's just a free plant token. Again, I say questionable why it has to be on ride. I'd argue the Roroa line is better, but the only reason why I don't go for the Roroa line in this one is because a free ride deck discard and also theming and free access to all these fucking cards is better in my opinion. Then we move on to our grade 2s. First up, we have 4 copies of Prod, Pollen, Raphilius. Grade 2 is a 5k shield, 9k base. This card will always serve its purpose in one of my plant token based decks. Another one is placed on rear guard. By Crown Blasting Wall, call to 2 plant tokens to rear guard. She is the most abusable card in this deck. Simply put, placing her on the board on grade 2 turn makes me 2 plant tokens. Do you know how many ways this deck has of making a full board of 5 on grade 2 turn? 3. It has 3 different ways to do it. And you know how often I draw one of those 3? Every single game. I have yet to have a single game where I have not been able to call 5 plant tokens out on grade 2 turn. No joke. And again, I say, this deck can even do it on grade 1 turn with Farmer Pumpkin and this one. Technically, you only get 4 rear guards, but that's still something. Unless you run the Roroa line, in that case, it's 5. Actually, then again, you won't be able to use Farmer Pumpkin, never mind. But you get the point. For Raphilios. By the way, this deck doesn't use any Counterblast. In fact, this is the only card in the entire... Sorry. It's one of 2 only cards in the entire deck that use Counterblast. So by all means, run this and you basically use its skill whenever the fuck you feel like it. For Polios, it's just free rear guards. And then we have 4 copies of Ran Orangian. So if you got mad at me for saying Counterblast 1 is not free rear guards, then guess what? This one's actually free rear guards. Great Unit, 5k shield, 10k base. All is placed on rear guard. You may call to one plant token to rear guard. So again, you don't have to, but you can if you want to. And then auto, front row rear guard circle. Not a hard once per turn. So if you have 2... Oh, by the way, this isn't a hard once per turn either. So you can just spam 4 of these if you felt like it. But... again, down to hard once per turn, so if you have 2 of them in the front row, you can do it. At the beginning of your battle phase, if you have a Vanguard with Graffinia's card name, doesn't have to be a grade 3, it can be a grade 2. You may call a plant token to rear guard. Again, not forced to, meaning if you have your Nobel Rose token and 2 of those in the front row like I did in the game on camera, you can send 2 free ones to Soul. This deck, like I said earlier, can easily go from 0 plant tokens or plant gauges on board to 10 in one go. This is part of the reason, this is part of the reason, this is most of the reason, and this is the other part of the reason. No joke, stupid. Hard 4-of. Freest rear guard gain ever. The only way this could be better is if it gave itself power or critical in an on-hit win condition, but at that point we'd just be cheating and this card would be banned in 5 seconds flat. 4 Ran Orangian. Just a good fucking grade 2 that gets plant tokens. Then we have our last grade 2 of the deck, and that's the grade 2 of the ride deck, Genius Wise Wolf Graffinia. 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. Continuous Vanguard. If you have a plant token on your rear guard circle, it doesn't have to be in back row center. So again, I question why this one specifically had to call it the back row center, but whatever. You may, if your soul has a Lord of the Future Graffinia in it, aka again the grade 1. What you do is when you ride a grade 3 with Graffinia, it's a card name from your ride deck. So it doesn't have to be the current one. If they ever give us a new one, we could do that. You can ride without discarding a card from your hand. So I've said this before. I hate how they keep like recycling the skill, like, because in my mind it feels like, oh, Bushy feels like they can't do better or knows they can't do better. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying they feel like they can't, and they just choose to slap on the free discard ride line skill on whoever they feel like it because the most generic skill they can think of, which. I kind of, like, it annoys me that they keep doing this. Like, the first 2 times they did it, it was kind of fine, because at least they had a reasonable excuse, because on, like, the 2 decks from Lyrica that literally were released in the same set together. So I was like, okay, fair, that one's okay. But then, like, they started doing it to every ride line, and I feel like now it's just getting a little bit unnecessary. So, 1 of this in the ride deck. Its skill isn't bad. It's a free ride deck card. I'm just saying, like, you know, can we not keep getting generic shit? Because it's starting to get a little bit annoying to me. And then we have our grade 3s. First up, we have 3 copies of Burst Peas. Grade 3, 200% 13k base. Auto rear guard once per turn when this unit attacks into anything by counterblasting one or retiring a plant token, or in the case of your, what's it called? The Nobel Rose token over here, it's retire a plant gauge. You can kill that, and you get plus 10k for the turn. So grade 23. Pretty nice. Persona Rides 33, which is great, and combined with Nobel Rose token, which we're about to talk about later, or like actually in a hot minute, it gets into the high 60s / low 70s. So 3 of Burst Peas. Good card. Good card. It's just nice to have. So never fuck with the numbers. And then we have our last card in the deck. It's a 1 of in the ride deck, 3 of in the main deck of Lavian Lord Graffinia. So great 3 Persona 13k base, act Vanguard, hard once per turn. By soul blasting 1 turn, all your plant tokens on your rear guards into plant gauges, and call a Nobel Rose token to the back row center rear guard, and put all your plant gauges on top on that unit. So, you know, it's essentially scoop up your entire board of plant tokens. It's great. I question what like they were going through with this, because that's an easiest cost of Soul Blast 1. And again, I say, barely anything in this deck Soul Blast. In fact, it's only this and this that's Soul Blast. And in terms of Counter Blast, which he, by the way, he doesn't cost any for his other skill, is only this and this. That's kind of why I like Row 2. It's because they literally have the freest cost to do the stupidest amount of shit. I feel like Stoicheia gets the good end of the stick when they just have, like, generic shit that involves plant tokens. Anyways, getting a Nobel Rose token, fair. And then Auto Van, at the end of the battle, attack anything. Put 1 or more of your Nobel Rose tokens and or plant gauges, a total up of 5 to the drop zone. So I believe you can, like, combine them, so 1 Nobel Rose token and then 4 plant gauges, which equals 5. Again, you don't have to put 5, you can put up to 5. Choose one of your rear guards, stand it, or it gets plus 5 for each card put into drop zone by this effect, and if you put 3 or more, stand that unit. So, you know, when I first played this deck, I didn't know it was a 5 or more restriction, So I kind of just shoved it all onto this one. I believe I was dropping 8 at a time for a total of plus 40. I mean, granted, you can have more than 5 under a Nova Rose token. You can only just drop 5 at a time. So, you know, a 50k swing is nice. But, you know, imagine Burst Peas, 23, maybe Persona Ride 33, plus the Nobel Rose token dropping a total of 5 on him. That's 58. Let's just put in an 8k booster. So, you know, that's, I don't know, I said 58 before, right? So 64? No, 66. Plus maybe this is what you gave the 5k from Horror from. So 71 plus 1 or 2 triggers, that's 80 or 91. I want this to be clear. He hit 71 before we started adding triggers onto that. So, just to be fair, restand for the simplest cost, power, and the easiest way to get your deck's main mechanic. There is nothing I can say about this to make that sound bad. There is nothing I can say about that, honest to God. Outside of just, to me, it feels like I'm just playing Roroa with the theme of Magnolia. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, I don't know how to explain this one. I don't like it for the simple reason it just feels like I'm playing 2 different decks meshed together. Again, like the Magnolia theme with the Roroa, I guess, play style, kind of, not really, into it, which makes me feel it's kind of just boring, like Bushy just literally reused the entire deck just to make a new thing. But honest to God, it's just so good. Like, your deck's main mechanic can be called out by a simple Soul Blast. The fact this deck, no joke, can spam, like, even if they can't spam out 10, because I've never, like, actually tried to spam out 10, it can definitely spam out 8 in one turn, easily, and not minus from it, and then you can proceed to consistently drop 5 plant tokens to restand a unit and give it plus 25, and which all can be done while your opponent's at grade 2, because none of this says your opponent has to be at grade 3. They're, like, genuinely, it's dumb. And even against retire-based decks, most of the time, if you're like me, you only have 3 rear guards, your Nova Rose token, the thing you stand with it, and something else. And you can pretty much call those back almost immediately. Like, it's bullshit. It's genuinely bullshit, and I don't understand it. And if you're playing against a deck that doesn't retire, you will have the most infinite soul I've ever seen. Because once you call down one Nobel Rose, unless they kill it, you can spend literally every other Soul Blast on this. It's dumb, and this deck has so much more support it can pull from Aroa. I just pulled what I felt like pulling from Aroa. Take it as you will. It's stupid. It's interesting. I wouldn't play it because, again, it feels like Aroa and Magnolia mixed together. But honest to God, it's dumb. Go play it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join Discord, follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.